at communicating. There's hundreds of definitions of communication. The most important reason, I think, is that you need to be able to communicate the value that you create as a project manager to your boss, your customer, your team, your division, whatever it is. It's no good doing it and then not telling anybody, or being shy or being naive. You must be able to tell people that and to talk about it. Get good at communicating the value that you create. If I was talking to a group of salespeople, I'd be saying the same thing, but it's especially true for project management. So, there's several. If we're in an MBA class, we'll be teaching several models. So the first one's Shannon and Weaver. This was developed around about the time of the telephone. We can tell by the language used in the model. Kind of similar to that, i.e. if we're communicating, I'm going to think of something, I'm going to say something, it's going to be in the either, you're going to see it or decode it, understand it. So there's 5 different things already. So me being me, no doubt what's in my head isn't connected to my mouth very well, so that's going to be different. There's going to be noise in the room or noise on the telephone or whatever to help to decode that. So very rarely the thing that you're thinking is the thing that's understood. Obviously I'm standing in front of you now thinking I'm giving you the best presentation you've ever seen. I doubt that's true, right? Okay, so yeah, lovely. Tough crowd. There's another model, Barnland's model, which is more complicated. The key point around this model is that you cannot not communicate, even by doing nothing, by ignoring people and doing nothing, you're communicating. So you cannot not communicate. The way you stand, the way you behave, the way you dress, everything involved in that is involved in communication. So we have to be aware of that. So you may be in a team, think, I'm just going to sit in the room and be quiet. It's very important. When I was at uni, I remember there was a girl in our class. She's the best tax lawyer in London. If anybody gets in trouble in terms of tax, I'll introduce you to Liz. She is amazing, but she's introverted. She's very quiet. She always used to turn up 20 minutes late every lesson, every time we had a lesson. And she'd walk along a bit like this, walk along the front of the room, and she'd sit down in her favourite chair. And when we graduated, I asked her, I say, Liz, why are you always late to lectures? What is it? And she says, well, I didn't think anybody noticed. Right? It's bizarre. They live in their own world, some people. So everything we absolutely do is communication. Saying that, when I was thinking about this, I thought, well, we're human beings with minds inside, so we can't just teach you some models of communication and expect you to be good communicators, because there's the layers, there's religion and culture and society, etc., etc. Somebody said to me once, we're like 2 onions bashing around in a shopping cart, right? A beautiful thing. All we interact with is the skin, it's just the outside, the person, the hood that we show in the world. There's tons of stuff going on underneath, and we need to understand that. So if you study psychology, no doubt you'll study, Sigmund Freud and Carl Jung, etc. Sooner or later you'll bump into Eric Berne. Eric Berne wrote a great book called Games People Play in the 60s. It kind of fitted in with the 60s, so it got very bestseller and all that. It got very popular in the 60s. But he developed this model called transactional analysis. And Berne tells us that everything we do is a transaction. And he says roughly speaking, there's 3 ego states. It's a parent, adult, and child. In corporate life, when we speak in corporate, we're trying to have an adult-to-adult conversation. However, sometimes this can slip, and it can fall into an adult-to-child conversation. So you're talking to a child, and you regress to being a child. Now, just imagine what it's like working for your parents, and you've got this going on. Some of you probably are in the room. I did. Anybody wants to have a beer and talk about that later, I'm happy to talk to you about it. You start regressing as a child, the other person comes back as a parent. And then you have a parent and child conversation with your boss, your customer, your client, whatever. So we need to have a grown-up conversation. So it's always about pulling it back to adult, based on reality, based on fact, based on normal, and not based on, well, you never said that to my brother, so right? That's no good for anybody. It does happen. We have another model called the Johari window, developed in the 50s. There's the site down there if you want to look at it. But this says there's things which are known to us, and there's things which are hidden from us, and there's things which are known to others, and there's things which are hidden to others. If you think about that, you can put that on a 2x2, and it puts it in here. The 2x2 is 4, so it makes you 4 different areas. First one, top left-hand side. The first one's the open area. So this is the area which teams perform. This is where we want. We all know everything that's going on. We know each other very well. Trust me, high-performing teams know each other and they behave as a team. They look out for each other. They understand everything that's happening in everybody's life and they work together as a group. You get teams here where we start hiding things from each other, or we get our own blind spots, so it's things the group know about you but you don't actually know. The trick to this is, if you're leading a team or working a team, you want this box to be as big as possible. Over time, it should grow naturally. But the way you get it bigger is by asking for feedback and encouraging feedback in your team. It's very difficult to do, to give feedback. It's very harder to give feedback than it is to receive. So you're going into a position of team leadership. One of the key things that you can do in that leadership role is encourage feedback. Politics. Now, I know 75% of the room will say something like, I'm not a politician, Rich. I didn't go into project management to play politics. That's for those naughty people in sales to do. They're all politicians. Let me tell you, whether you're playing, so not playing politics is actually playing politics. You're playing the game, whether you like it or know it or not. So you need to take control of that. Let me show you why. So if we plot 2 lines here, politically aware people and politically unaware people, and on this side, it says integrity, so we act with integrity, and then we have the game players on the other side of that. And we can draw up a 2x2, kind of, and we can roughly put it into different groups. Now, I asked this to a group of MBAs 3 or 4 years ago. I was teaching a similar sort of thing. And I said to them, I had a different title on there. I said, so what happens to the sheep? And a guy from the back of the room, he was from New Zealand, I can't really do the accent, he said at the top of his voice, Rich, the sheep get, right? He used the F word. So the sheep get destroyed. I put the sheep get fleeced here. So we do not want to be politically unaware and in this bottom acting with integrity down here, do we? What do we want to be? We want to be the owls. So it's possible to be politically aware as long as you act with integrity. It's not a naughty word, it's not a horrible thing to do, it's something you need to build into your careers for that. So, again, talking to some of you in the pub, I thought it was worth me giving you I've not counted them, so I'm going to guess 10, my top 10 tips for doing a presentation. Another key thing in careers is learning how to do this nonsense. If you can stand up in front of a group of people, it will add a 0 onto your salary. Trust me. If not, I'll give you your money back myself. It helps you no end. Now, I've seen some of my best friends, engineers and people, really technical people, not want to do this sort of thing and then start to do it. It takes about 6 months, 9 months, I think, to get to be able to talk to a group. You just have to do it. So the too long didn't read to all this is just have a go. Find somewhere where you can start to practice presenting and then do it, because it will change your life, it will change your careers. So first tip, don't rely on technology. I came in earlier, the computer didn't work, projector, it's guaranteed none of this nonsense will work. So you might walk into a room and have to just talk. Your screens might not work. So I was on a Zoom call with Thomas just before this. None of the stuff worked, so he just went, don't worry, I'll just talk you through it. Okay? So obviously, he's going crazy behind the scenes, but he just calmly went through it. It's an experienced chap, calmly went through it. I'll just talk. I don't need the comfort blanket of my PowerPoint slides. I do most of the time. Best presentation I ever saw, I was in a board meeting. It wasn't my board, I was in a board meeting once, and a guy, the sales director for Europe, stood up and he said, right, okay, board, I'm going to show you the sales. He drew a map of France. You have to imagine, because I can't. He drew a map of France like that, and then he drew the sales predictions for the quarter. So that's sales is blah, blah, blah. Turned it over, right, draw Germany, sales projections for the region, and so on. And so on, draw the UK. When I draw the UK, I've lived here for 50 years. When I draw the UK, I just draw 2 triangles. He drew all of Cornwall and Kent and Devon. It was amazing. Afterwards, I said to him, how do you do that? what's the secret? I gone in for a coffee after, and he said, what I do, I get in the room the night before, and I get a pencil, I really lightly draw, honest, I really lightly draw the thing. It was like watching Bob Ross do a painting, it was amazing. He said, I lightly draw it, and then I'll scribble it out like I'm, really passionate about it. So it's all scripted. Wonderful. So keep it in your back pocket, technology might work. I went to do a piece of consultancy for somebody once, sort of talking to this, to sort of like corporate environment for 40, 50 partners, a very large accountancy firm in the UK. I walked in, obviously I've got about 200 slides to show them, and they says, no Rich, this is a PowerPoint free zone. We just want you to talk for 45 minutes. Nightmare. So that might happen to you. So you just got to prepare for it and think, well, the slides don't work, the slides don't work. Get in the room early. Don't turn up with 30 seconds thinking that you're going to have enough time. Get here half an hour before. Walk around the room, sit in the different chairs. Make sure the thing works, make sure your clicker works, etc., etc. Fancy fonts. This thing's got one font in it. It's called Arial. It's the default font. I'm not that bothered. I'm going to share all the stuff with you, and I want it to look like this on your computer, so I'd bet you my mortgage you've got Arial on your computer. If not, you must have some fancy computer I've never heard about. So it's going to look like this on your computer. Don't do all the fancy fonts, because the formatting won't work. It'll look stupid. And it might look great on there, it won't look great on there, trust me. So just nice and simple, nice and easy. Now this photograph, you could look at, this is a work of art, this photograph, you could look at it for hours, all right? So most of today I've been looking at it. You got this guy here, he's lying down. It's in Manchester, okay? That's what it is. He's lying down, nearly got the bottle of beer, stretching out. He's not giving up, is he? This fella here, he's being arrested, looks like he's resisting arrest, face down in the drain, or face up in the drain, and his missus is telling him off. So he's got enough problems, love. People are looking. She's not even looking. I mean, this chap's lying, but she's not even looking. What does she look at? You can look at it for hours. It's beautiful. Well, composition's amazing, right? So, obviously, they've all done lots of drinks and drugs. I've spoken to people before that have done presentations. They'll say, oh, I've just had a beta blocker, which I feel brilliant. Or I've had a couple of espressos. Or I've had, your alcoholic friends. I've had a pint to steady the ship. Right, I've heard that before. Don't do any drinks, or you don't need any coffee, you don't need any energy drinks, you don't need anything like that at all. We don't need a Barocca, because you'll be full of adrenaline anyway. So you'll just get through it. So be careful, because you'll end up doing something silly like getting stomachache or going through in 30 seconds or forgetting half of it. So. Ums and ers and ahs. I said 3 times. It's really annoyed me. I apologise. You'll pick this up. It's annoying when the professor or the lecturer or the presenters, this, that, and then to get through it, you need to be comfortable with the pause. Oh, that's horrible. But you need to get used to that pause in your speech. Your voices are beautiful. Just get used to the ebb and flow of your voice. Get used to that. At uni, what we used to do, that's how nerdy we were. We used to sneak into the lecture halls at night. Sounds like Harry Potter. Sneak into the lecture halls, stand at the front, or my mates would stand at the back, and I'd practice my presentations every time, and then he'd clap his hands or make a noise to try and make me realise ums and ers were going on. So it takes practice, and it's difficult, but get rid of those because they're horrible. And then practice. It's horrible. Practice in front of my kids sometimes, tell them all the jokes. Obviously use lots of jokes in the stuff. They love it. Darth Vader and Popeye and stuff. They like all that. Try and film yourself. I know it's tricky, but try and film yourself. Look at a mobile phone and then watch it back. If you can get through this, filming myself, watching it, cringing, improving, filming myself, watch it, cringing slightly less. If you can do that sort of thing, you can get used to doing it. You can see what you sound like. I know your voice is going to sound weird because you don't hear it how the mic hears it, do you? But get used to doing that and get through that process and do that. Risk-free environments. This is lecture room 1 at Cranfield University, Bedfordshire, where I now work, actually. I used to study there, I now work there. This was a risk-free environment for me. So when I was doing my masters, they'd say to you, right, Brooks, down the front, come and talk about Porter's 5 forces or whatever, we did that week. So I think Porter's 5 Forces is great, and all of that. Right? It broke the ice, and it got you used to standing down the front and talking and doing all this in front of your peers. But it's kind of risk-free, it's kind of not, but it does help. So how can we use this? Well, is this room not, we're all friends, right? Is this not risk-free for all of us? Kind of is. You can volunteer and do this. This could be you. You can volunteer and do this. This can help you. This association can help you to do that. Do it at work, do it with your friends, do it with whatever, charities, everything. Elia's always looking for content. I'm sure the local charities that you're involved with are looking as well. So that can help you do that before you do the big one in front of the big client, and it's all really scary. But then at least you can draw on the flow chart, can't you? You can draw on it. Copy that trick. They'll love that. Body language. I've not put any content on this on purpose because it's kind of nonsense, but it's kind of not. You ever been in that lecture when the chap's standing over here behind, like, scared silly? I'm going to present to you today about the... Right, it's not nice, is it? So it's obviously, if you're standing like, if you're like this, or like this, or like, just try and be open. Well, I always try and do it. It's difficult, it's got my bad finger, but I was trying to hold something to stop. I can't put my hand in my pocket today, I'd scream, but you don't stand with your hand in your pocket and things like that. It's a bit rude, isn't it? Obviously different cultures, it means different things, so be careful. So try and hold things. If you're just talking, you can do the trick of holding some cards, even if nothing on, it gives your hands something to do. Also give, when we're coaching senior people, give them a pencil or something like that they can sort of play with when they're talking. It helps calm them down a little bit, like a baby's rattle, I guess, but you can hold on to something that can help you. Work with your interpreter. Now, I know there's some Argentinians in the room. I'm sure you've all seen this. If not, this is Ronaldo's coach for Saudi Arabia. Saudi were 1-0 down against Argentina. Some might say the best team in the world. Coach goes around the room, gives a speech of his life. What happens? They come out, score 2 goals, win 2-1. It's amazing. What a game of football that was. The star of it, though, is this chap, the interpreter. Right? He's French talking English, but he's then getting that English and telling the people. I couldn't actually find his name, I'm sorry to say. I think if anybody needs an example of the value at which we offer the industry or the world, it's this. You want to beat Argentina? Get a decent interpreter. What's that worth to Saudi? I don't know, $200 million? I don't know what it is. That's worth an absolute fortune to beat those guys on the world stage. And yet they did it. If you're talking and you're working with an interpreter, sometimes you do this internationally, there'll be booths and things, I'm sure you will work with this. You need to give the interpreter the slides at least the night before. You need to talk to the interpreter. You need to leave pauses in your talk more. And obviously if you make jokes and things like that, it's really hard to translate, to interpret into a different language. So you need to be aware of that. Obviously if it's industry specific things, then maybe you need to give them some background on those particular models or frameworks which you would present. Austin Powers, mind your language. You've seen this scene in Austin Powers where he's talking to his dad. He says something like, I can't talk in front of these American birds. Well, let's speak English. And nobody understands, not even I could understand what they were saying. It was just total gibberish. The link's there if you want to look at it. So, be careful of idioms, be careful of slang. Even in the UK, there's a different language in a different town. Manchester's very different from Liverpool, very different from Leicestershire, where I'm from, etc. So you've got to be careful about the words you use. We said talk ain't cheap. You've got to be careful about the words you choose to use and do that, especially to an international crowd. This is Margaret Thatcher. She was Prime Minister of the UK in the 80s, sorry, gosh. Prime Minister in the 80s. Love her or hate her, one thing she was very good at was press conferences. So she would sit in front of a press conference. All the questions had come at her. She was really controversial in terms of her opinion and her policies, and she changed the UK forevermore. And she'd sort of get loads of questions. She'd say, the guy from the back just asked me about monetary policy. That's the question. So she would ask the question, and then she would answer her own question. It's really clever. So you can take that and you can do that in a group. You guys start shouting at me, or you might ask me a question. I can perhaps change that slightly and then tell you the thing that I'm going to ask myself anyway. Or a good way, if you get stuck, you can ask the audience, say, well, that's a great point you've just made. can we put that to the room to get a wider view on, you know, if you don't know the answer. So, and sometimes you just need to buy yourself a little bit of time. So repeating the question can help and give you an extra sort of 30 seconds to think about it. Structure, simple. Tell them what you're going to tell them. Tell them what you told them. That's basically it. Keep it to about 20 minutes because people doze off, especially this time of night. People doze off quickly after that. I'll pose and get a picture like that. Yeah, it's like really clever. Thank you. Social media, it will be shared on social media anyway, so make it friendly, make it tweetable. I used to write all my sort of phrases and thinking under 140 characters. Obviously that's all changed now, but keep it succinct because it's going to be tweeted. Keep it kind of light-hearted. People are going to share it on LinkedIn and Twitter and Facebook, God forbid, and all sorts of things like that. That's War and Peace, the first couple of pages of War and Peace. We've all been in class or presentations when it's been like this. And it's even worse when people start to read it out. So if you want to do it, I could send you a PDF of that afterwards, couldn't I? I don't need to put that on the screen. That's total nonsense. So don't be text heavy, and please don't read the text out because your audience can read, and it will really annoy them if you start reading the slides because they've already read the slides. They've probably already had the slides, so they've already looked at your slides. You they've come to see, not this. Getting to the end now, pick your mentors. This is not about presentation, but it's important in terms of your career. This is Jim Rohn is the mentor to Tony Robbins. Tony Robbins is one of these big American guys who likes to talk about self-help, and he's great. Look him up on YouTube. He's absolutely amazing in terms of motivational speaking and things like that. Well, Jim was his mentor, and Jim says you're the average of the 5 or 6 people that you hang out with the most. So we can backward engineer that and think, well, who do I want to be? What sort of attributes have they got? Let's find some people with those attributes. Let's hang around with those people. And that's straightforward enough. So if public speaking was something that you want to learn or want to be good at, which I implore you all to be, then that's your quick thing to do in your own companies. Who's good at it? Who's doing it? How can I learn from this person? Keep it to time, which I have. Brevity is a virtue, so keep it to time. Don't overrun, don't waffle on. There's nothing worse than, you know, thinking the football's on and Rich is still talking. God, 2 hours of this nonsense, and he's still rattling on the same slide. He's telling me a story about something which I don't care about, blah, blah, blah. So keep it brief. Get your point across, keep it brief. You'll have all the slides, all the models are in there, so you can see them and look at them on the plane on the way home. Little advert for me, my new life. I'm doing training. I'm doing 2 lots of training with this wonderful company called Slater. First one's about operations management. Second one's about sales. 2 new for a graphic, the sales course. Ops is in February. Sales is in March. See me after if you want to sign up. Sadly, that's the end.